There was one thing Camilla wanted more than anything else in the world. For years, she could only watch it from a distance, completely unable to touch it. Then it showed up exactly where she never wanted to see it. Locked around Catherine's neck, Camilla fought for that piece with everything she had for years. But Queen Elizabeth had been saving one final move for the very end. And that move was about to break Camilla completely. Stay with me, because this is not really a story about jewelry. It is a story about power, humiliation, and a grudge that lasted a lifetime. The pearls she never saw coming. It happened inside St. George's Chapel in April of 2021, on the day they buried Prince Philip. Britain was still locked deep in the pandemic, so only 30 people were allowed inside a chapel built to hold hundreds. The royal family walked in 2 by 2, masked, spaced far apart, with no hugging and no comfort allowed between them. And right into that cold, silent room walked in Catherine, wearing a 4-strand pearl choker that caught the light pouring through the stained glass. Anyone who knew royal history felt their stomach drop the second they saw it. Those pearls had once belonged to Diana. She wore that exact choker in November of 1982. The night she charmed an entire nation during a state visit to the Netherlands. After Diana died in 1997, those pearls were locked away and untouched for almost 24 years because nobody was thought worthy of wearing them again. And now, at her own husband's funeral, with every camera on Earth pointed at her family, Elizabeth had personally chosen to unlock that box and place those very pearls around Catherine's neck. Now, here is something almost nobody knows. That choker did not start out as a choker at all. Diana reportedly had a longer string of pearls cut shorter just before that 1982 trip, to hide a mark left on her neck after a private moment with Charles the night before. So this piece was born to hide something. And now, decades later, that same piece of jewelry was being used to do the exact opposite. It was being used to expose something right there in front of the whole world. Just a few feet away, Camilla could neither move nor say a single word. People who studied the funeral footage afterward say what showed on her face was not grief at all. Her jaw was locked tight and her eyes were flat. And if you looked closely enough, something flickered behind them that had nothing to do with mourning Philip. It looked like rage, the kind of rage a person swallows for years and is suddenly forced to choke down in complete silence, on camera, with the whole world watching. Camilla never once looked at Catherine's neck. She did not need to. She already knew exactly what was sitting there and exactly what it meant. But to truly feel the weight of that moment, you have to remember who Camilla used to be. Back in 1996, a member of the public actually threw eggs at her car as she drove away from an event. For years after that, newspapers across the country called her the most hated woman in Britain. So when Elizabeth placed Diana's pearls on Catherine instead of her, it did not feel like a simple styling choice to Camilla. It felt like a verdict, delivered in public, confirming every cruel thing she had spent 25 years trying to outrun. Sources close to the family later revealed something that never made the news. Camilla, who had never once left a royal event early in 16 years of public duty, walked out of the funeral reception ahead of schedule that day, blaming exhaustion. It was, by every account, the very first time in her entire royal life that she walked away from a room before she had to. Elizabeth had personally chosen every piece Catherine wore that day. She picked Diana's pearls on purpose, with Camilla standing close enough to see them shining under the chapel lights. That was a message, and it was cold, sharp, and impossible to miss. But here is what you need to understand. This moment in that chapel did not just appear out of thin air. Elizabeth had been quietly building toward it for 16 long years, one decision at a time. And to understand exactly how she built it, we have to go all the way back to where this entire Cold War truly erupted. 17 years in the cold. It all began in April of 2005. The day Camilla married Charles in a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor, the same place where she would one day stand frozen watching Catherine wear Diana's pearls. By marriage, Camilla had the legal right to be called Princess of Wales, a title that still belonged to Diana in the public's heart. Camilla's team reportedly pushed hard for her to take it, and she was even overheard saying that she was the one standing beside Charles now and that the title suited her more than anyone. The palace was reportedly stunned. The woman so many blamed for breaking up Diana's marriage now wanted to wear Diana's own name. Elizabeth's answer came fast and final. Camilla would be called Duchess of Cornwall, and not one syllable more. Now here is something almost nobody remembers. Because the wedding was civil, Elizabeth reportedly refused to allow Camilla a single royal tiara that day. She wore a plain hat instead and became a royal bride without one diamond on her head. On the one day a tiara would have meant the most. That was only the first cut, and it would not be the last. Camilla still needed jewels for state events, so she turned to the royal vault, a place packed with centuries of diamonds and pearls. Surely there was room for her in there, but Elizabeth had already drawn lines Camilla could not yet see. Behind closed doors, the Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly, began writing down every request Camilla made and demanding approval before any piece touched her skin. Outwardly, it looked like simple protocol, but inside that palace, everyone understood it for what it really was, a leash. Camilla was steered instead toward the late Queen Mother's old jewels, stunning pieces stuck firmly in the past, with no link to the living future of the crown. And even those old jewels carried a buried warning. Many once belonged to a wealthy socialite who left them to the Queen Mother on the condition that only a woman of spotless reputation should ever wear them. A woman dead for decades had already written the exact rule that would one day be turned against Camilla. Then in 2011, Catherine married William in a tiara pulled straight from the Queen's own collection, and the whole world fell in love with her. Camilla let it be known, through the right people, that as the wife of the future king, she deserved to come before Catherine. Elizabeth said nothing out loud, but behind those locked doors, something was already moving. Diana's pearl choker, sealed away since her death in 1997, was quietly cleaned and prepared, not for Camilla, but for Catherine. That alone should have told Camilla everything, yet she kept pushing. She admired the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace, the single most valuable piece in the whole collection, a gift from 1947 once printed on currency and stamps. Of course, she never even got near it. Then in 2014, Elizabeth gave the necklace to Catherine instead, handing over decades of royal weight in one single night. Camilla wasn't ready to give up so easily, so she tried again with the Cambridge pearl brooch, the one piece Elizabeth had worn for 70 straight years, and quietly asked if she might wear it sometime. Elizabeth only smiled and said nothing. Then the very next year, that brooch appeared on Catherine for her first official portrait with William, the most viewed royal photograph of the whole generation. Camilla's request was simply buried under diamonds and never spoken of again. Then came Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace, tied forever to the very title Camilla had been denied. In 2018, Catherine wore it to a state dinner in the same room as Camilla. Not one word needed to be said that night. By now, Camilla understood something had already been decided behind her back, so she turned to Charles. Every single time he pushed for her, Elizabeth handed Catherine something even bigger in return. Charles learned slowly and painfully that this was a war he could never win against his own mother. But the deepest cut of all came from a quiet little bracelet, known as the Edinburgh wedding bracelet. To feel why it hurts so much, you need to know where it came from. Philip's mother, Princess Alice, lived through one of the darkest stories in royal history. In the 1930s, doctors wrongly diagnosed her with mental illness and put her through a brutal treatment built on a theory we now know was completely false. Alice was torn away from her 5 children, including young Philip, and locked away for years. And yet, during the Second World War, she secretly hid a Jewish family inside her own home in Athens, risking her life to save theirs, an act later honored by Israel decades after she died. Alice gave away nearly everything she owned and died poor inside Buckingham Palace. The one thing Philip saved was her tiara, which he broke apart with his own hands and turned into a bracelet for his bride. Elizabeth wore that bracelet for 73 years, and when she finally let it go, it went to Catherine. Then, in February of 2022, just 7 months before she died, Elizabeth finally gave Camilla one thing she had wanted from the start. In her Platinum Jubilee message, she said it was her wish that Camilla be called Queen Consort. After 17 years in the cold, Camilla finally had the title. Just not the one thing that ever truly mattered. 7 months later, Elizabeth was gone, and every lock in that vault changed hands overnight. Camilla finally had everything she had been denied for almost 20 years. So what did she do the moment she got it? And did having it all finally give her what she really wanted? Everything, and still nothing. According to reports, Camilla made her move while the Queen was barely cold in the ground. Her first big statement was the Vladimir Emerald Tiara, a massive piece built around a 93-carat emerald which Elizabeth had kept locked away for 70 years, not for lack of beauty, but because its history was too dangerous to touch. That tiara has a darker past than most people know. It once belonged to a Russian Grand Duchess who fled St. Petersburg during the Revolution of 1917, leaving her jewels hidden behind a wall safe inside her own palace as soldiers closed in. A British family friend reportedly slipped back into the city disguised as a workman, found that safe, and smuggled the jewels out of Russia hidden inside an ordinary bag. That piece was born out of a monarchy collapsing in blood and fear, and it sat locked away for 70 years because wearing it openly meant waking up the ghosts of an entire fallen empire. Camilla wore it anyway to a reception at Windsor in late 2025, and within hours people online were asking the exact questions Elizabeth had spent decades trying to bury. Then in March of 2026, at a state dinner for the Nigerian president, Camilla arrived stacked in Elizabeth's old bracelets under a towering sapphire tiara, wearing every piece like a trophy. Catherine arrived that same night wearing only one thing, the lover's knot, the tiara Diana once wore even though it gave her headaches, the very one Elizabeth had made sure went to Catherine. Catherine did not need to stack anything. The whole room felt the weight of Diana's memory and the Queen's blessing land at the same time, and every camera turned away from Camilla. Because here is the truth this whole story has been building toward. There was one thing Camilla could never pull out of that vault, not even with Elizabeth gone and every drawer wide open. The trust, the grace, the thing those jewels carry simply because they sat on Catherine's skin instead of hers. And here is the most devastating fact in this entire story, the one almost nobody connects to the jewelry war at all. When Charles became king, the title Princess of Wales, the exact title that started this whole 17-year Cold War back in 2005, passed straight to Catherine. Not because Elizabeth willed it, and not out of spite. It simply happened because that title belongs to the wife of the Prince of Wales, and that man is now William, not Charles. Camilla can never legally hold that title. Not now, not in 10 years, not as queen, not as anything else she could ever become. The one thing she wanted on the very first day of this entire war became impossible to get on the exact day her husband finally took the crown. And here, finally, is the cruelest part of all. As Queen Consort, Camilla now actually holds the legal power to ask for the very jewels Catherine wears, since none of this was ever written down to protect them. She could ask tomorrow for the lover's knot, the pearl choker, the Edinburgh bracelet. There is nothing on paper to stop her, but she will not, and deep down, she knows exactly why. Taking those jewels would not hand her Elizabeth's legacy. It would only prove, in front of the whole world, that she is exactly the kind of woman the public always accused her of being, someone who reaches for things that were never meant for her. Elizabeth is gone. The vault sits wide open. Camilla finally has everything she was denied for almost 20 years. And yet, she still lost, because none of this was ever really about the jewels. It was about what Elizabeth saw every time she looked at those two women and the choice she made, quietly and firmly, about who would carry the crown forward.